Can't sleep? Discover the sinister truth behind the haunted sounds you've never exposed. Sarah stared at the thick shadows pooling in her new living room. It had been a long day of unpacking boxes amidst her two restless children, Tommy and Lily. Now, as dusk settled over Thornwood, the weight of silence descended like a shroud, and an unsettling chill coiled around her spine. She had hoped for peace, a fresh start after the chaos of her divorce, but the night whispered a different tale. Just as the moon peeked through her window, she heard an eerie rustle against the walls, a soft thudded echo that sent her heart racing. She gulped. At first, she blamed it on old pipes, expanding wood, or perhaps the wind through creaky eaves. After all, nighttime sounds were a part of life in a new home, right? Yet, as she drifted off, exhausted, the sounds morphed. She thought she was dreaming when whispers began to seep through the plaster, strands of voices weaving into one another, murmuring something she couldn't quite discern. Her eyes shot open. Was she losing her mind? Weeks passed, each night bringing escalating noise thumps that vibrated the floor and the steady, oppressive feeling of being watched. Tommy and Lily slept like logs in their shared room. Or at least, they appeared to. But soon Sarah would realize they weren't so unaffected. Lily's screams shattered the quiet, her tiny body trembling under the bedcovers. "Mommy! The man in the walls!" She cried, eyes wide, a storm of terror reflected in them. The words chilled Sarah to her core. "It's just a nightmare, sweetheart. Just close your eyes." Tommy, her strong, brave boy, began to echo his sister's fright, sharpening the shadows in Sarah's heart. "I've heard him too, Mom. He whispers. I heard him say your name." Her chest tightened. The terrifying notion settled over her, wrapping around her like a snake. Could there really be something sinister lurking in the recesses of their home? Determined to banish their fears, Sarah dug into the folklore of Thornwood. The man in the walls was nothing but a legend, a boogeyman for frightened children. Yet the deeper she searched, the more unsettling connections she uncovered. Streetlights flickered sporadically during the dark hours, pets vanished like whispers in the night, and neighbors watched her, their eyes guarded as hushed conversations followed her that left her feeling like a fish out of water. She needed help, so she turned to the authorities. But dismissive shrugs and patronizing smiles met her. "A woman suffering from an overactive imagination," they said. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As days turned to nights filled with dread, nervous glances, heightened paranoia, and whispers growing bolder, Sarah became a shell of her former self. One fateful night, she roused herself from sleep, heart hammering as real fear clawed at her throat. The hum of the house had transformed, it felt alive. Shadows flickered and twisted at the corners of her vision. Clenching the flashlight tighter than a lifeline, she descended into the basement, the depths of darkness calling her like a siren. Now, whispers echoed back, loud and insistent. They churned the air around her with their sinister rhythm, making her skin crawl. And then she heard it, distinctly, a voice, low and menacing, reverberating through the damp air. "Sarah." A chill ran down her spine at the sound of her own name. In that moment, everything clicked. The man in the walls was no tale spun to frighten children, it was a stark, twisted reality. As the darkness closed in around her, suffocating her hope, she knew the danger was real, and he was waiting. "You shouldn't have come here," she gasped, frozen, dread flooding her with every heartbeat. In the thick silence, her reality twisted. What had she just awakened? The basement's air felt thicker, heavy with something oppressive. Sarah's heart pounded like a war drum in her chest as she stood immobile, flashlight flickering over the damp walls, transforming shadows into monstrous shapes that writhed and twisted. "Who is there?" she choked out, voice barely a whisper, afraid to break the fragile stillness. Silence hung like a noose before the voice returned, smoother this time, caressing her ears like a dark melody. "You're not alone," Sarah, it echoed, a sinister lullaby that made her skin prickle. She took a shaky step back, her flashlight beam faltering as terror clawed at her insides. The children were asleep upstairs, blissfully ignorant of the horror lurking beneath their home. Those sweet faces, could they truly be safe? Clenching her jaw, she fought against the rising fear. "Leave us alone," she shouted, searching the cold, dark corners for movement, but the shadows remained unmoving, brooding. Then came a soft thud from the far corner, a distinct sound that sent icy fingers skittering down her spine. She swung the flashlight over, illuminating a wooden crate stacked precariously on top of boxes filled with items from her old life. It stood there, almost as if it were expecting her. Gulping back her fear, Sarah took a cautious step toward it. "What do you want?" she demanded, circling it slowly. The whispers intensified, a cacophony of voices murmuring her name, promising secrets and dangers intertwined. "Open it," the voice urged, deep in her mind, woven through with the rustling fabric of her growing dread. As if possessed, Sarah reached for the crate's lid, cold wood beneath her fingertips. But she hesitated, aware that she was crossing an unspoken boundary. A part of her screamed to run, to escape this hellish place, but the other part craved answers, yearned for understanding in the wake of the terror consuming her. "Don't be afraid," the voice crooned, this time filled with a chilling charisma. "You know you want to see." With a deep breath, emboldened and terrified, she lifted the lid. Dust plumed into the air, swirling around her like phantom hands. Inside lay crumpled, yellowed papers, and a single porcelain doll, its eyes cracked and haunting. Even in the feeble light, she could see the strangely familiar features of the doll, closely resembling Lily. The same blonde hair, the same round cheeks framed by a fraying blue bow. Sarah, it wasn't just a voice anymore, it was a cold, tangible presence creeping closer, whispering secrets of sorrow and despair. She shouldn't have found what? She breathed, eyes wide. What had she unearthed with such reckless curiosity? And suddenly, the world grew darker, shadows stretching and shifting before giving life to grotesque shapes that began to coalesce around her. The chilling laughter rang out, echoing inside her skull. Sarah stumbled back, flashlight wavering in her grasp, illuminating the basement with brief glimpses of horror. Just then, the screams of her children sliced through the oppressive air, dragging her back to the surface of panic. "Mommy! Mommy!" Their voices pierced the darkness, shaking her to her core. The man in the walls, he wanted them, too. She recoiled at the thought. What had she invited into their home? With fear morphing to fierce resolve, she darted for the stairs. She had to protect her kids. She had to get them out. But as she reached the top, a heavy thud rattled the house, and the front door slammed shut, locking them inside. Sarah, her body froze. It didn't come from the walls this time, but from right behind her. "Run," she gasped, heart racing, adrenaline pumping through her veins. But there was no escape from the truth. There was nowhere left to hide. What had she awakened in this house, and at what cost? The chilling sensation wrapped around Sarah like a vice. She turned slowly, the darkness choking all hope from the room. The voice, that dreaded whisper, breathed softly against her ear again, sending shivers down her spine. "They won't be safe until you understand. Where are you?" she shouted, scanning the dimly lit hallway, desperate for sight beyond the creeping shadow. There was no answer, just the suffocating weight of silence pressing in on her. "Mommy!" Another shriek echoed from the children's room. Panic surged through her, a tide of fear that could not be contained. She sprinted down the dim corridor, each footfall heavy and unsteady. The walls seemed to pulse, breathing in sync with her racing heart. "Lily!" Danny. She needed to reach them. She needed to protect them from whatever shadow was lurking around the corner, waiting patiently while they remained blissfully unsuspecting. The children's door stood ajar, light spilling into the hallway, a beacon amid the surrounding dark. She pushed it open, her breath catching in her throat. There they were, huddled together under their covers, wide-eyed and pale. "Mommy!" they cried in unison, relief washing over her like a soothing balm. "Shoo, it's okay, I'm here." She hurried to their side, pulling them into her arms, the warmth of their small bodies anchoring her amid the chaos. "Mommy," the man he was in the wall, Lily whimpered, burying her face against Sarah's shoulder. "What man?" It was the first Sarah had heard about this. "What are you talking about?" Danny's tiny voice piped up, quivering. "He told us to be quiet, to not say anything." The weight of dread crashed over Sarah again. "What did he say?" "They said if we talked, they would hurt you," Lily murmured, glancing warily toward the wall. Laughter, distant and sinister, slipped through the cracks of the house, ricocheting off the wooden panels. It danced around them, a mocking symphony of dread. "Mommy, I'm scared." Danny whimpered, tears streaming down his cheeks. "Me too," Sarah admitted, her heart clenching with fear. But she wouldn't let it consume her. She had to stay strong, had to keep her children safe. Suddenly, the floorboards creaked loudly behind them. A dark shape slithered into the room, pooling like shadow at the foot of the bed. Sarah's instincts kicked in. "Stay back!" she shouted, clutching her children tighter, blocking them from view. The shape shifted, taking form, a tall figure with hollow eyes that glimmered like shards of glass. It grinned, a wide, malevolent smile that stretched uncomfortably across its face. "Why don't you join me?" it whispered, voice an echo of torment. "You'll never have to be afraid. Not anymore. Leave us alone." Sarah shouted, strength faltering in her voice. The thing recoiled, as though struck, but then moved forward, undeterred. With no other option, she gathered her courage and pulled the children up. They needed to leave this cursed place. "We're going." She yanked open the window, adrenaline pushing her forward. As she turned to lead her children out, she felt it. The oppressive force wrapped tighter around them, filling her with despair. "Not so fast," the figure purred, a darkness pouring out from its limbs like a thick fog. Sarah stumbled backward, pulling the kids with her as the laughter grew louder, mixing with their panicked breaths. With desperation clawing at her heart, she faced the overwhelming terror. "Why are you doing this to us?" The darkness responded with a bone-chilling calm. "Because you woke me just then." The lights flickered above, plunging them into darkness as the laughter washed over them, a tidal wave of despair. What had she awakened? And what price would she pay for trying to leave? As the darkness enveloped them, she knew that the horror was far from over. Would they escape? Or had they simply sealed their fate? The darkness felt alive, pulsating, as if it hungered for their fear. Sarah's heart raced. She held her children close, breath shallow. She could hardly see them, only their trembling forms pressed against her as shadows enveloped them, sinister and heavy. "Mommy?" Danny's voice was small, barely audible over the cacophony of laughter echoing in the dark. "Stay quiet," Sarah urged, though her own voice trembled. "I need to think." The window they had once considered an escape felt like a gateway to another realm, a place far from safety. They had to move, but where? The laughter morphed, twisting into guttural sounds that clawed at her sanity. The figure loomed closer, flickering like a dying flame. "You can't leave," it crooned, its voice dripping with malice. "Not until you understand, until you listen." "Listen to what?" Sarah shot back, her bravado fading as desperation clawed at her throat. "What do you want?" "You're the key," it whispered. "You must hear the truth." The words echoed in her mind, and a chill ran down her spine. "What truth?" The laughter subsided, replaced by something far more sinister, a low growl, as if the darkness had a voice of its own, a predatory sound that curled around her. It gripped her with icy fear. She needed clarity, something to fight against this terror. "Lily, Danny," Sarah whispered, "we need to get out of here." She turned to the door, but as she did, the laughter erupted anew, filling her ears, drowning out her thoughts. The walls appeared to close in, the space shrinking. "Mommy!" Lily cried, tears staining her cheeks. "I don't want him to take you." Sarah's heart shattered at the sound of her daughter's fear. "I'm not going anywhere," she shouted, more for her sake than theirs. "We are leaving. Together." With determined resolve, she started to back toward the window, but the figure surged forward, its distortion becoming clearer. The hollow eyes glinted in the gloom. "You cannot escape that which you have awakened, Sarah." "Shut up!" she barked, raw terror pushing her past her limits. "I won't listen to you." Suddenly, the lights flickered back on, illuminating the room in a harsh glare. Sarah blinked against it, disoriented. The figure was gone, but she felt the weight of its presence, lingering like a shadow under her skin. "Quick! Out the window!" she urged, pushing her children ahead of her. They climbed through the narrow opening, desperation propelling them into the humid night air. But as her feet hit the ground, a gnawing hesitation seized her. The house loomed behind them, its very walls pulsating, the laughter growing ever louder, a creeping echo of sinister amusement. "Mommy, run!" Danny tugged at her hand, urgency in his voice. "Go!" Sarah cried. She turned back for just a second, compelled by some unseen force. The facade of her home shimmered, and in that moment, she could see faces worn, hollow, specters trapped within the walls. Their mouths moved, opening and closing, forming words she couldn't hear but felt in her bones. They were silent screams, a desperate chorus that begged for freedom. "What have you done?" The wind seemed to whisper, a ghastly reverberation that slithered into her ears. "Mommy, please!" Lily sobbed, shaking her as the chill seeped deeper into Sarah's soul. "Go, keep moving." But as she turned to flee, the ground trembled, and something cold snaked around her ankle. Panic surged as she saw the darkness rearing its head once more, hungry and insatiable. In a frantic motion, she yanked her leg free, staggering forward. They bolted into the night, but the weight of their reality clung to them like a dark cloud. "Where do we go?" Danny asked, his breath coming in gasps. "Anywhere but here." The laughter rang out once more, a chilling reminder that they were not alone, that the horror was still hunting them. "Then what do we do?" As the shadows stretched and clawed at their heels, the chilling reality loomed large. They might have escaped the house, but they had not escaped the darkness. What did they awaken, and how far would it go to claim what it believed was its? They sprinted into the thick trees behind their house, branches clawing at them like skeletal fingers. The moon hung low, casting eerie shadows that danced around them. Sarah glanced back, her heart pounding. The house stood still, but it felt like it was watching them, a malevolent sentinel drawing strength from their fear. "Keep moving!" she yelled, her voice edged with urgency. Danny and Lily followed, the sound of their small feet crunching on fallen leaves drowned out by the ever-present laughter that twisted around them like a creeping fog. "What is that sound, Mommy?" Lily's voice trembled. "Just the wind," Sarah lied, though the laughter felt alive, mocking their escape. Goosebumps prickled along her arms. "Mommy, I'm scared," Danny whimpered, glancing over his shoulder. Fear gripped her heart. She was scared, too. They weren't just running from the house, they were running from something much darker. They reached the edge of the woods. A rickety old shed appeared, its paint peeling and door ajar. "We can hide in there," Sarah urged, relief flooding her as they bolted inside. The air was stale, smelling of mildew and forgotten memories. Inside, they huddled together in a corner, shallow breaths mingling in the oppressive silence. "How long do we stay here?" Danny asked, eyes wide. Until it's safe, Sarah replied, though deep down, she feared it might never be safe again. Suddenly, the laughter returned, louder than before, echoing as if the darkness itself was laughing at their retreat. It ricocheted off the walls, intensifying her dread. "Mommy!" Lily shrieked, her voice breaking through the cacophony. "What if it finds us?" Sarah squeezed her daughter's hand, trying to gather strength. It can't know we're here if we stay quiet." But those words felt hollow, and in the corners of her mind, anxiety crept in. She could sense the figure watching, stalking them from the shadows outside. Every moment stretched like an eternity, the laughter growing into a sinister melody that wrapped around her and tightened, then it stopped. Silence blanketed the shed, thick and suffocating. Sarah held her breath, tension coiling in the pit of her stomach. Had they imagined it? Was the worst over? But as if summoned by her hopeful thought, the door creaked open slowly. The dim light from outside flickered in, casting long shadows. A silhouette loomed in the doorway, an impossibly tall figure, its features obscured by darkness. "Did you really think you could hide?" It whispered, the voice oozing with darkness, curling around her thoughts like smoke. "Run!" Sarah screamed, yanking her children up and shoving them toward the back wall. They pressed against the splintered wood as fear coursed through her, electrifying and bitter. The figure stepped inside, the air growing colder with each inch it moved. Shadows coiled around its legs. Weeping, chanting echoes filled the shed, and Sarah felt the presence of the trapped souls spilling out from the walls, their energies thrumming through the very wood. "Listen to them, Sarah," the figure hissed, inching closer. "They scream only for you. Stop!" She shouted, backed against the wall, desperately shielding her children from the encroaching horror. In that moment of despair, she caught something in the figure's gaze. Was it fear? Recognition? The thought twisted with her brain, and a flicker of daring ignited within her. "Why," she stammered, "why are you doing this?" The silence that followed felt like a chasm, heavy and tight. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, the figure paused and vanished, leaving the door wide open, inviting and terrifying. The laughter faded, replaced by the sound of their own hearts racing. "Mommy, what do we do?" Danny said, his small voice barely a whisper. Terror gripped her again, but there was only one way forward. "We follow the light." She led them toward the exit, feeling an unshakable sense of dread wrap around her heart. What waited outside? With the figure gone, had they truly escaped? Or had they only stepped into a far worse nightmare, as they emerged from the shed into the moonlit? Clearing, the laughter returned, echoing behind them. This time sharper, more insistent. The swirling shadows danced, beckoning, daring her to look back. What had they awakened in the night, and would it ever stop haunting them? They stepped out of the shed, the moonlight washing over them like icy water. Sarah barely breathed, holding her children tightly, as if the simple act of physical contact could shield them from the unseen terror. The clearing felt surreal, mirroring a nightmare where everything was just slightly off. Shadows stretched and curled, whispering secrets from the depths of the forest. "Where do we go now?" Danny's voice trembled, barely escaping his lips. The adrenaline began to wear off, leaving a lingering dread that settled deep in her bones. Just keep moving," Sarah urged, trying to mask her own uncertainty. She pushed forward, heart racing, every crunch of leaves underfoot amplified in the oppressive stillness that surrounded them. The laughter echoed again, closer this time, a chilling reminder that something was still out there. It played tricks on her mind, twisted and eager, mocking her desperate attempts at silence. Suddenly, a flash of light cut through the trees. A light bulb flickered like a flame striking against the dark, beckoning her with an otherworldly glow. It came from a narrow path, almost hidden by bushes and creeping vines. Without thinking, she grabbed her children's hands and pulled them down the path, praying it led to safety. "Mommy," the laughter. Lily squealed, panic bubbling in her voice. "It's too loud." "I know, sweetie." But we have to keep going, Sarah said, grit in her teeth. They pressed onward, each step heavy with dread as if the earth itself fought against them, the path twisted like a serpent, the branches arching overhead forming a makeshift tunnel. The laughter morphed into whispers, a cacophony of chilling voices aiming to ensnare the minds of the frightened trio. It felt as if the woods themselves were alive, eager to absorb their fear. Why does it want us? Danny mumbled, pulling closer to his mother, not letting go of her hand. She felt his little body tremble against her. I don't know, she admitted, her heart sinking further, but we have to find a way to stop it. As they went deeper, the light grew brighter, bold and fierce. It illuminated a clearing up ahead, revealing an ancient stone circle, overgrown with vines, pulsing with energy. The laughter was a steady thrum now, echoing off the stones, resonating with the pulse of the earth. Sarah slowed, feeling an inexplicable pull toward the circle. Is this it? She whispered to herself. This was no ordinary place, it felt sacred yet cursed. Before she could make sense of it, Danny fell to his knees. Mommy, I'm so tired. His eyes were heavy lids, darkened with fear and exhaustion. No. Danny, we can't stop. Sarah said frantically, shaking him lightly. We can't rest until we're safe. Just then, the lights grew eerily dim. Shadows merged, filling the space with a palpable dread. The laughter shifted into shrill screams, wrapping around them, heightening her terror. She looked around, searching for help or a way out, but found only the unyielding stone faces of the circle, blank and sinister. Mommy! Lily shrieked, pulling at Sarah's shirt. Let us go back. No. This is wrong. Sarah yelled, practicality burning through her fear as she pushed herself to act. We need to face it. But as she took a step toward the circle, a gust of wind howled through, throwing leaves around them, a tempest bearing down. Dirt filled the air, obscuring her vision. She felt the children stumble beside her as darkness surged, tightening its grip on the edge of her sanity. Just then, she saw an ethereal figure rising from the center of the stones. It glimmered, a wisp of shadow and light, its face shifting. Eyes locked onto her, glinting with malicious intent, pulling her attention away from the terror surrounding. What do you want? She shouted defiantly, heart racing, while panic held her children tight. The figure reached out, a chill connection slicing through the space, as a raspy voice echoed, to set you free. And in that instant, she understood. The night had only just begun, what decision would lead them to salvation, and what horrors awaited should they choose incorrectly. The air thickened, heavy with something unspeakable as the figure loomed closer, a darkness stretching like a hungry shadow. Sarah felt the children tugging at her with a frantic urgency, their wide eyes reflecting the terror that gnawed at her heart. Mommy, it's coming. Danny gasped, his voice a whisper edged with horror. Stay close. She commanded, forcing herself to ignore the creeping chill crawling up her spine. The whispers morphed again, echoing her own thoughts, taunting her with snippets of her fears. They were everywhere and nowhere, the voices blending into a grotesque symphony of anguish. The figure sparked to life with a sudden movement, shooting lights across the stone circle like lightning striking in the dark. A barrage of faces materialized all around them, mouths agape in silent screams, their eyes wide with a mix of longing and despair. They looked broken, as if they had lost something precious, and it struck Sarah like a punch to the gut. Is this what happens to those who come here? She thought, her mind racing through the terrifying possibilities. Mommy, it's so cold. Lily's voice trembled, snapping Sarah back to focus. Her daughter was shivering, eyes searching the obscured wisdom of her gaze. Hold on. We're getting out. Sarah shouted, her resolve tightening as she stepped back, trying to chart a path away from the shadows. But the ground felt alive, pulsing beneath her feet, trying to root them in place. With every step, the circle drew them closer, a magnetic force that pulled at their very souls. What if we don't follow it? Danny squeaked, the innocence of his question barbed with worry. What if it's lying? I don't know. She was breathing heavily now, the weight of her uncertainty pressing on her. What if listening to the figure was the only way out? Was there a choice that could save her children? Suddenly, the darkness flickered, revealing the clearing beyond the circle, vague and almost dreamlike. It seemed to whisper promises of safety, tantalizing freedom. But behind her lay the figure, a gaping maw of shadows, awaiting its next move. First, face it. Sarah spat out in determination. We confront whatever this is. The ethereal presence curled its shadowy fingers, beckoning her forward. There can be freedom, a release from your fears, just accept the truth. Her heart hammered aggressively in her chest. What truth? She demanded, her voice ringing in the night. The figure laughed softly, sending chills racing into her bones. The truth that binds you. The truth of the past and your own shadows. Before she could grasp its cryptic meaning, the ground quaked again, the stone circle vibrating as if resonating with dark energy. The faces around them began to swirl, drawing closer, merging into a tapestry of lost souls entwined in eternal torment. Help! Lily cried out, clutching Sarah's leg, panic framing her voice. Stay with me! Sarah shouted, feeling her own fear threatening to swallow her whole. This was a battle for their lives, and she wouldn't go down without a fight. The shadows lunged, an army reaching out to claim them. Then she remembered her grandmother's stories about the forest, the warnings of the ancient spirits and the price of disobedience. The light from the circle flickered again, pulsing rapidly like a heartbeat. Come, children, Sarah said fiercely, knowing she had to act fast. We need to break free before it binds us. But just as she turned to escape, the ground erupted beneath them, splitting like a maw ready to swallow everything whole. She felt the pull, each choice weighted with potential ruin and salvation. In that moment of chaos, the laughter returned, deafening, echoing the cries of the lost. The night held its breath, anticipation crackling in the air. What path would they take among the lurking shadows? Would they flee or be ensnared in the grasp of the night? The darkness watched, ever hungry for their fear, for their choice and for their very souls. Which way would they turn? The ground shook violently, snapping Sarah back into focus. She could feel the earth clawing at her, trying to yank her down into its cold embrace. Her heart raced, pounding in sync with the pulsating light from the circle. It felt alive, as if it had a will of its own. Go, Mommy. Please. Danny cried, his face pale, tears glistening in the dark like beads of glass. I'm trying. Sarah barked, her grip tightening around her children's hands. They had to break free. Adrenaline surged through her, filling her with a desperate courage. Run! She shouted, turning away from the figure, away from the circles of lost faces. They stumbled in the dim light, feet slipping on the damp soil, hearts hammering as the shadows stretched and gleamed, reaching for them. Each step felt like wading through thick tar, dragging their bodies back with every ounce of malevolent force the darkness could muster. But with each frantic pull of her feet, Sarah could hear the laughter again, a cruel sound that churned the insides of her stomach. It twisted around them, weaving through the trees, intoxicating and maddening. Mommy! Lily's voice broke through, raw and terrified. What if we never get out? Don't say that. Sarah snapped, fighting to quell her own anxiety. The weight of her children's fears rested on her. We will get out. We can't listen to it. They reached the tree line, branches clawing at their clothes. Dim moonlight spilled through the leaves, illuminating the way. Just when hope flickered bright enough to see, the figure lingered in her periphery, dark and massive, lurking like a predator. Sarah, it called, the tone dripping with temptation, a sickly sweet lure. Why resist? Her skin prickled with dread. Because you're a lie. She shouted back, forcing herself not to glance at it. You're just fear. A sharp shift in the air made the children gasp. Shadows whipped around them like wicked tendrils, groping toward their ankles, searching for any chance to latch on. "Mommy, it hurts," Danny whimpered, pulling back. "Trust me, Danny. Hold my hand tight." With a forceful tug, she yanked him forward, braving the whips of darkness. But as they broke free from the trees, she felt a familiar panic rising, a dread that swallowed her thoughts. Where are we?" Lily stammered, gazing around in confusion. The clearing opened up, a vast expanse stretching into the distance, bathed in the grim twilight. A line of stones loomed at the far edge, similar to the circle they had just escaped from. This time, filled with murky figures, none of whom looked alive, all waiting, watching. "Mommy." Danny's voice cracked, the realization settling in that they might only have traded one horror for another. "No," she mumbled, panic tightening around her throat. "This can't be happening. Not again." But the whispers returned, a cacophony of tortured voices cascading in her mind like waves crashing against jagged rocks. Memories surged unbidden, past mistakes wrapping around her. "You don't belong here, come back, you have so much to atone for." The thickening fog curled around them, a sinister invitation to step into darkness anew. "Look! Over there." Lily pointed toward a flicker of light beyond the stones, a clear shimmer against the rolling gloom. "Maybe it's a way out," Sarah said, steeling herself for whatever came next. But doubt gnawed at her. Could anything truly be an escape from the deep well of despair they'd encountered? As they drew closer, the whispers intensified, echoing her doubts and fears in haunting harmony. "You know the truth will find you." Sarah's heart raced as she felt the weight of eyes upon her, a thousand judgments glimmering in the darkness. One final push toward the light and then a terrible scream tore through the clearing, echoing through the trees. It faded slowly, leaving an unnerving silence, a silence pregnant with the weight of unspoken horrors. What awaited them in the flickering glow? Would it lead them to salvation or further into the abyss? "Stay together," Sarah implored, eyes locked on the spectral brightness beckoning them. Closer, just as they reached the edge, a figure emerged from the shadows, its intentions hidden in the dark. Its voice sang a soft but sinister lullaby. "Are you ready to confront what lurks inside?" And at that moment, Sarah's breath hitched, the answer lingering ominously between them, unanswered and looming. The figure, unnaturally tall and thin, moved closer, the flicker of light casting elongated shadows across its gaunt features. It wore a tattered cloak that seemed to absorb the surrounding darkness, making it blend in and out of the shadows as it approached. Who are you?" Sarah's voice came out as a whisper, the ghost of her fear echoing in her throat. The air was thick with tension, suffocating her senses. "I am a guide," it replied, the words swaying in the stillness. "Many seek me out, longing for freedom from what binds them. But only those willing to face their past can truly escape." "Mommy, I don't like this," Danny whimpered, pressing against her leg. The light behind the figure pulsed, and with every heartbeat, it felt closer to consuming them. "He's trying to trick us," Lily shouted, her eyes darting to the creeping shadows. "We can't trust him." "Trust? Such a fragile thing," the figure mused, a slow smile curling its lips. "You cling to it, yet it can slip away just as easily as dust on the wind. What if I told you that your lives depend on an inescapable truth?" "I don't want to hear it," Sarah yelled. But curiosity gnawed at her. An insidious need to know. What was the truth? The figure shifted, its gaze piercing through to her very core. "Your children, they are not merely lost here," it crooned. "They are reflections of your own fears, your failures, your burdens." "Stop!" Sarah cried, her fingers entwining with her kids, pulling them in closer. Their eyes widened, terror mixing with disbelief. The silence that followed was thick, as if the world held its breath. Then, the ground trembled softly beneath their feet again, a low rumble like distant thunder. Vines withered, and the light behind the figure dimmed. Sarah felt an obligation, as if she was the cause of this nightmare circling around them. "Let me help you, Sarah. Let me guide you through the darkness," it said, its voice a silken whisper, drawing them in like moths to a flame. "No, no, no," Danny whimpered, his small hand trembled in hers. "Mommy, I want to go home." "Home?" The figure echoed, laughter bubbling from deep within. "But is there a home for you in the midst of all you've lost? You tread between two worlds, always searching for refuge. What do you want from us?" Sarah screamed in frustration, desperate to regain control. "Leave us alone." The figure tilted its head, watching her with an unsettling glee. "To confront your truth, my dear. To embrace what you've tried to escape, only then will the chains of despair shatter." Suddenly, the whispers erupted around them, rising in crescendo, tugging at their ears, urging the children to join them in the depths of the shadows. "Lily, Danny, come." The voices called, sweet and deceptive. "Don't you wish to know?" A chilling draft wrapped around them like a vice, threatening to pull them apart. "I want to let you take them," Sarah roared, determination welling up within her. She stepped forward, heart pounding, defiance coursing through her veins. "I'm not afraid of the truth. Not anymore." As she shouted those words, the figure recoiled slightly, its smile fading. The ground shook violently beneath them, sending them stumbling. "Face the truth, or lose the only light you have left," it hissed, anger flashing in its hollow eyes, the surroundings blurred, the air thickening into a suffocating haze, and a piercing shout erupted from within the shadows. Would the truth bind them together or tear them apart? A heartbeat later, Sarah felt a pull within her chest, a call from the light that now teetered on the edge of brilliance. "We must go," she urged, fighting against the tug of the figure's ominous laughter. Just as they turned, the ground opened up below them, revealing a chasm that threatened to swallow them whole. "What will you choose?" the figure sang, its voice reverberating with mockery. As panic surged, Sarah knew they were at the edge of a decision that could change their lives forever. Could confronting their past stir the salvation they desperately sought? With the darkness closing in, Sarah gathered her children, steeling herself for whatever lay ahead. "We go together no matter what." And as they plunged toward that searing light, a gripping question lingered in the air: would they uncover the truth, or would they fall into the abyss? The air crackled with a strange electricity as Sarah braced her children close to her chest. They plunged into the blinding light, tumbling through a whirl of vibrant hues, warmth enveloping them like a protective blanket. The chaos subsided, and she opened her eyes to a familiar sight that made her gasp. They were back in their living room, safe, but not unscathed. The shadows, once thick and oppressive, shimmered gently now, transforming into soft, dim reflections of their former selves. "Mommy?" Danny's voice quivered, cutting through the fragile silence. "Are we safe?" Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she surveyed the space around them. They were whole, unharmed, but darkness lingered at the edges, like wisps of smoke just waiting for the right moment to creep back in. "I think so, sweetheart," she answered, even though the skepticism gnawed at the back of her mind. Lily, clutching her stuffed unicorn, a shocked remnants of their harrowing ordeal, peered up at her mother. "What happened? Where's the man?" "The man in the walls." Sarah mused, her memories flooded with shadows. "It was never just a story. He was our fear, our past waiting to be confronted. But we faced him, and together we broke free." The children stepped back, exchanging wary glances over a shared understanding of their journey. Laughter bubbled like champagne in the distance. Then suddenly, an ominous voice pierced the air, whispering through the creaks of the old wood. "You can't escape that which you awakened." It wasn't a threat but a tangible reminder that they carried the shadows within them now. "No," Sarah said, choking back panic. "We faced you. We confronted our fears together." She grasped her children's hands tighter, willing strength into them. The shadows swayed, their sinister laughter growing softer, almost like fading echoes lost to the night. Fear is not so easy to quench, it murmured, almost playful. You must acknowledge it every day to keep it at bay. And yet. At that moment, Sarah felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Recognition dawned on her face like a burst of light. The darkness relied on her fear. She turned to Danny and Lily, both wide-eyed and waiting. You know what that means. We can't run from it. We need to confront it every day. Together. The creeping shadows hesitated before slinking back, confusion twisting through their forms. You dare defy me? Sarah stepped forward, fear transformed into conviction. You are just a piece of our past yesterday's demons. We want to let you take our future. The floor seemed to tremble as if the house itself reacted to her declaration. The shadows hissed, shrinking back, their dark laughter replaced by reluctant murmurs like fading wisps of smoke. Mommy, we're strong together, Danny whispered, emboldened by his mother's courage. Yes, baby, Sarah replied, heartbeat steadying. We're stronger together. Gradually, the shadows lifted, retreating like mist before the rising sun. A bright beam shone through the window, illuminating their small living room, the once foreboding corners now filled with familiar warmth. No longer were they encased in fear. They had broken the hold the darkness had over them, and they had done it as a family. Exhale. Relief flooded Sarah's chest as she looked down at her two children. In this moment of shared strength, she vowed to embrace their past but not let it dictate their future. They could draw on their memories, learn from them, weave life through them like a tapestry, but never allow fears to dictate their existence. Rolling laughter erupted from outside, joyous and carefree. The sun shone bright, birds chirped in harmony, and an unshakable feeling of hope nestled in the pit of her stomach. Can we go outside? Lily asked, eyes sparkling with innocence, untainted by the night's terror. Yes. Let us go enjoy the light. Sarah exclaimed, a genuine smile breaking across her face. The first in days, they slipped outside, basking in the morning sun. Sarah breathed in the fresh air, filling her lungs with warmth and possibility. Together, they walked into the new day, hand in hand. Casting aside the shadows that had stalked them, but as they stepped beyond the threshold of their home, she'd carry that reminder always that darkness could lurk, could twist itself around the edges of existence. But through love and courage, they would stand united. And with that resolve, they smiled, ready to embrace whatever came next. Here's the thing: if you found yourself on this wild ride with us, don't just hover in the background. You need to subscribe now to our channel. This is the moment to show your support. Hit that like button now so we can keep thrilling you with these exclusive stories. We want to hear your reactions and theories about this ending. Flood the comments section. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support fuels us, and we can't wait to take you along on the next adventure.